Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
What's up, Delora?
Hello.
We are back with a gritty courtroom drama this week. I feel like you told me it's been a while since we've done something moody, and I was like, maybe so. Maybe we've kept it a little light and fluffy. So we about to get into some murder today.
Exactly. And I was like, well, we did do Divorce in the Black, but I was like, no, that was a comedy.
Exactly. Ridiculous. All right. So I love Apple TV Plus because I just feel like as far as content goes, while it may be sparse, when it hits, it hits. And Presumed Innocent was a previous hidden gem for me for this reason. This is so cinematic. I feel like it was so well done. It is 8 episodes and it started dropping weekly as of June. Quick summary.
David E. Kelly.
David E. Kelly and J.J. Abrams, baby. Like royalty.
Powerhouse. Exactly.
Royalty. Quick summary. A horrific murder upends the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office when one of its own is suspected of the crime. This is based off of a 1987, shout out to the 87, novel by Scott Turow. And I also noted that there is a 1990 film starring Harrison Ford, who played the lead character of Rusty Savage. So now I have to find this film. And I have to watch it.
I didn't know that.
Had no idea. I saw like the graphic of it. And I'm like, hold on. I had no idea the story had been told. So I'm glad I didn't know in advance and had never seen this because I didn't want to ruin. This was such a good like whodunit mystery show for me till the end, right? So the very end. So the cast for this series, Jake Gyllenhaal as Rusty Savage, Ruth Negga as Barbara Savage, O.T. Faginley as Nico De La Guardia, Peter Sarsgaard as Tommy Molto, Renate Rinsve, I hope I pronounced that right. There's a couple names in here I hope I pronounced right, as Carolyn Polimis, Bill Camp, girl, Bill Camp as Raymond Horgan, Chase Infinity as Jaden Savage, Kingston Rumi Southwick as Kyle Savage, and Noma Dumezweni as Judge Little. Review.
She was in The Undoing.
She was. She's been in a few things, but yeah, The Undoing, she was also in the court because she was a lawyer.
But she was a lawyer in Undoing, and we recapped that one, so I wanted to make that tie. And another David E. Kelly project, apparently, too.
Reviews. Rotten Tomatoes, 78% critic score, 80% audience score, and 87% of Google users gave this series a thumbs up. What is your grade for Presumed Innocent?
My grade for Presumed Innocent. So what did I enjoy? Stellar cast, stellar acting. To your point, it was very cinematic. I am pretty bright. So is my husband. And we had no idea who did it until the very end. So bravo to them on that case. I will say, though, it was very moody in terms of a lot of, people glancing out the window. And I have to admit, I have fallen asleep a couple of times trying to watch this show all the way through. But when it was good, it was good. So yeah. I give this project a B.
It's an A for me. Like I said, I came into it. First of all, that's another thing about a lot of Apple TV projects. I don't be knowing about them until they drop. And I'm like, ooh, what's this Apple TV Plus? And then I started and I'm like, yet again, you blow me away. And so I think it was just the excitement of having a new series I know I could sink my teeth into. Again, the cinematic nature of the delivery of these series that they have. And I love a good whodunit, a good courtroom drama. Like it's one of my favorite genres of
Yeah.
things to watch. And I had such a strong hunch and I was wrong. So I'm going to talk about
Yeah.
that at the end.
Yeah. I love to talk about that as well.
All right, spoiler alert. The series, as I mentioned, follows Rusty, chief deputy prosecutor for the city of Chicago. Probably, possibly my favorite city in these United States, if I'm honest with y'all. I love Chicago.
Really?
I
I'm
love
a DC
Chicago.
girl.
I haven't
I
been.
love DC.
I'm about to go for the first time. So,
You've never been to Washington, DC?
not as an adult. No, ma'am.
Huh.
So I'm
Okay.
excited. Don't know if it's going to top Chicago because me and Chicago got a love affair going. At least summertime Chicago, summertime shy, as they say. Anyway, Rusty's colleague, Carolyn Polimis, is murdered. And she was tied up similarly to the victim in another murder case that she actually prosecuted. The infighting that we see in the Chicago District Attorney's office on who would take this case was not just personal, but very, very political amid a contentious election. Now, this bothered me. I was like, y'all should not be politicians. Like, this is life and death. This is
Everything
people's,
is political.
but this is like legit politics, right? Where they're trying to curry favor with the public and having press conferences and doing all. I was like, this is life and
Actually, the
death.
way they interacted with each other, I was taken aback. I was gagged. I was like, oh, we talk to our colleagues like this? I was not ready. I was
You're a
not
hack,
ready.
Tommy. You're a hack.
Diametrically opposed foes. Like I had no idea. No idea.
You want to come at me? You want to come at me? You want to come at me? You're upset. you're clearly upset. Like, yes, everybody was upset. Your coworker was just murdered, right? So everybody's upset. But freaking Raymond, the head dog at the time, when they were heading into the funeral, said, "Nothing is beneath me. I once fucked an ottoman."
Girl, that took me out, especially in light of the ongoing jokes with JD
JD
Vance.
Vance. I said, how did I not catch this on my first watch?
I was like, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Oh my
How
gosh.
has no one snipped that out and it's not living on these internets? Because this, what?
Exactly. Exactly.
So again, political, emotional, personal turmoil. Rusty is put on the case. But plot twist, case surprise, surprise, girl. Him and Carolyn was having a whole affair. A rather passionate one at that.
It's like how this show dropped these bombs so subtly. I was like, wait, what? Excuse me?
I think for me, it was so just like jarring because I kept seeing just these extremely heightened, passionate flashes, right? It's like we're living in Rusty's mind and memory. And I'm
Yes.
like, you didn't just have an affair. Like, this was next level sexual exploits. It seemed
Yeah.
like y'all was having on a very regular basis.
Yep.
And I felt some type of way because Rusty is married to a Black woman
Girl.
and has Black children. And I said,
Listen.
you gonna cheat on your Black family with this white woman? How dare you?
He was obsessed. He was obsessed, Ashley.
My question to you with that is, did he love her in your opinion, or was it just lust? Because the way he could not let go made me feel like it was just like he was just caught up in the lust of it all. I never felt throughout this series, I never felt love.
Okay, so I have two things to say. The first, I felt like Rusty was manic throughout this entire series. So much so that he was completely and utterly unlikable to me and didn't have too
It's
many
very
redeeming
unlikable. Yeah.
didn't have too many redeeming qualities. So the question of whether or not he loved Caroline or not, I think he was obsessed with her and obsessed with the sex that they were having. But even speaking to the love, I didn't even feel it with his own family. Now, granted, I know the relationship was strained due to his activities, right? But I feel like in some moments, like there was this one moment they were all on the couch together, laying on one another. And then, their dinners and stuff together was to show them as a family unit and the level of, connection he has with his children. But I don't know. I think Rusty was very narcissistic. And so, like, very self-centering, and so the idea of him loving someone more than himself, it was really hard to decipher in my viewing of this.
I think it's a good point you made about him being unlikable because of the fact that this is a courtroom drama, right? And so it's going to be valuable for us to have some level of buy-in to the idea that we don't want Rusty's life to shift dramatically based off of everything that's going on. And I don't know if I ever felt that level of buy-in as an audience member because I'm so immediately just taken aback and pissed off by the reality of his character. Similarly, of how I felt about Ghost and Power. The reason why I never really got into that show is because by episode 2, he's fucking around with Angela as supposedly the love of his life, and he's married to this whole black woman over here, Shuri Naughton's character, and treating her like she's just little leftovers. And that, I never got over that.
Well, if you ask anybody from New York, they were like, oh, it doesn't matter. She's a Latinx woman, There's no real, what they say, daylight in between. It was a woman of color, so he was still with a woman of color or whatever.
False. The lies. There is absolutely, let's not get into this. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. That's a stone cold lie. All right. So the level of compassion that Ruth Nega's character as Barbara, his wife, had for this situation was saint level to me. Throughout this series, I just kept saying, Barbara, I don't know how you're doing it. Like, she was so compassionate in her behavior towards him. Even when you first find out that Carolyn has been murdered and she comes to him and she says, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm going to try to support you through this. I just can't go to the memorial.
Right.
Support you through your mistress getting killed. You lucky I'm not tap dancing on that bitch's grave.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the fact that she even suspected him to even ask her to go, though, I'm like, I hope he wasn't going to ask her. But I agree. I feel like she handled the situation as best as she could. I mean, sis did have to resort to daytime drinking. I'm like, Rusty is turning his wife into a freaking alcoholic. Okay.
Because it has to go somewhere. She doesn't yell. She doesn't raise her voice. She's always very even keeled.
Yep.
And so it's like, yeah, it has to go somewhere, right? It had to go somewhere, saint level. And so because of all this, these shenanigans that we find out about, eventually the office finds out about too, because Rusty is ousted as chief deputy prosecutor. His boss, Raymond, loses the election. And so he finds himself the prime suspect in Carolyn's murder investigation. Turns out, again, not only were they having this illicit affair, which allegedly had ended, didn't really end, whatever. He was trying to get back with her. She was pregnant at the time of her murder. And so guess what? We need to swab them cheeks.
Crazy.
We need to swab them cheeks. Going back to the internal conflict in the office, the biggest conflict was between Rusty and Tommy Molto, who takes over this case from Rusty. What were your thoughts on Rusty's behavior as well as just their general tension in their relationship?
My understanding between the nature of their relationship is that I felt like Tommy was jealous of Rusty in multiple areas. I think career wise, as well as his relationship with Carol. Whether or not, I think at that point, he obviously didn't know the extent of her relationship with him. But the envy was present as far as I was concerned. And Tommy was always trying to prove himself in some one way or another. In terms of how Rusty treated him, I think Rusty treated him like the star quarterback treats the band geek. like,
You ain't told
I
a
don't have
lie.
time for that.
Because that was my thing too. It was like it's like the top dog kind of kicking the geek or something like that. Like if this was a teen rom-com,
Yeah.
Rusty is the head dog of the school. And he's like, who are you to try to come in here and say something to me and try to,
Yes.
and granted, they make it seem like Rusty is very good at his job. Like it's not like he's arrogant and incompetent.
Right.
But to your point, also, Tommy was creepy. Like Peter Sarsgaard played this character very well because I ain't like Tommy either. I was like, you're creepy.
Girl, everybody was a suspect for me.
Everybody was absolutely a suspect. They kept it kind of grainy to keep you in that place. But he
gave
was
me
creepy
the ick as well.
Yes. Part of me thinks he was just lonely. And you know how like sometimes you have to work on your own internal happiness to not project that out into the world and onto others. Maybe he just cared and was a little bit too obsessed with his job because he needed to focus on himself and his own happiness. And that would have been the thing that helped smooth out some of the edges of whatever he's not getting from work. Because I think even his boss who won the election says like, you have a need for validation, but you're also a narcissist. That's a rare combination in a person.
Girl.
And I think Tommy just said like, sounds expensive to fix or some shit like
that. Some of their dabs were funny. That also makes their back and forth kind of funny too, because I'm like, that's his brother-in-law.
I literally had in my notes, F you, Rusty, because I was just kind of over the way he was acting as if he was on the defensive, like he didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why all this heat is coming on me. Like, how did you think you were ever going to be able to get away with during an investigation for murder, not being found out as having had an affair with this woman? As soon as they went through her phone records, period, they were going to know that you guys were carrying on an affair. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me in terms of his like defensive-ness. But to your point, he was obsessed. Carolyn was the one who actually ended it. And so because all the evidence eventually comes out about their relationship, they made a super quick arrest. Like they came to the house, they had a warrant, and then pretty soon after, Rusty was arrested. Rusty's former boss, Raymond, reluctantly agrees to represent him. There starts to be, questions from his inner circle about his innocence. Did you think he was innocent at this point?
Absolutely not. You're talking about a man who had an affair with a colleague that was knocking on obsessive, and she's pregnant with his child. I think it was pretty convenient for him to be suspect number one. It's always the intimate partner. Like she didn't have a husband or a boyfriend or, a legit boyfriend. So So he was my suspect number one throughout the entire series.
I never thought he was guilty. I never thought he did it.
You never thought he did it?
I never thought he did it. And
I thought he did it the entire time.
I think my rationale was I was like, that's going to be too boring. Like if he did it, that's so boring. It's the same way I ended up feeling about The Undoing, right? Not spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't heard our recap and seen it. I want it to be juicy. That's the whole point of watching a whodunit is I want to gasp in surprise. And if it's Rusty, that's not surprising.
I think when it is the person you suspect, I think it only works if they're diabolical in terms of like their psyche, right? Like they're able to show that level of manipulation, right? Like, oh my gosh, I was hoodwinked because they play that role like a sociopath.
Yeah. One of the
You know what I
scariest
mean?
scenes in the history of cinema is on Get Out when she
Yeah.
flips that switch and
Yeah.
you see the lights go off and you're like, oh
They didn't turn
my
on, they turned
God.
off.
Like Allison Williams, I've said this before. If I ever see her in the street, I'm going to the other side because she freaked me out. Seriously, because it was one thing for her family to do the things they did, but for her to be able to have that level of manipulation, that's terrifying to me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I was going through the whole series, like, because an innocent man is not this manic, Ashley. He was unhinged in the show.
I never thought he did it. I really did not. I was like, so the whole series for me was trying to figure out, like, okay, not even the whole series. Like I said, I'm gonna leave my hunch to the very end because I had a strong feeling. I just knew who did it. And so, yeah, it was never, Rusty was never on my list. It was Tommy was definitely on my list. Family potentially was on my list. I thought maybe there was going to be some shady character that we just didn't really see kind of coming who was on my list.
Like
her son. I was like, I don't know,
on my list,
girl, but it was never Rusty for me. Like I said, I just thought it would be too boring.
What was the point of this manic behavior from him then?
So that's a good question. For me, I thought it was, to your point, a personality thing with his obsessiveness and kind of the way he runs his life, right? And plus it's a pressure cooker situation. Your lover, who you're obsessed with, is murdered. And then shortly thereafter, your life falls to shambles because then you get found out and you're accused of her murder. I think that there were a lot of things and a lot of pieces of his behavior that made sense in terms of how someone may act if they are put in that situation. Rusty's is just magnified because it was just a lot that we're seeing that is from his perspective, right? But his family said, we're going to stick beside him through this trial. Do you think his wife set the tone for the kids in terms of how they treated Rusty after they found out the truth?
1000%. If their mom was a woman scorned and actually showed emotion, they would mirror that emotion.
Another reason to be grateful for Barbara. Because Barbara was like, I think you need to tell them something.
Saint level as the husband from past lives?
That's a great question. She's even more saint level because in past lives, she didn't really have the affair. In past lives,
they were thinking about it. Let me tell you.
Girl, in past lives, it was more so like, I'm a stay in my place because no lines have been crossed. In this, all the lines have been crossed. And part of me is thinking if Barbara even had a glimpse of their sex life, she'd be running for the hills. And the fact that woman had the audacity to be asking him, does Barbara do you like this?
You took this out of my mouth. That's why I called her a hoe. It was like you knew exactly what you were doing.
See, y'all can't see me, but I'm choking her out in my camera because Carolyn had a lot of audacity. I didn't like her too. As a murder victim, I did not feel much grief.
She was not a sympathetic character.
No.
Girl, the fact that she had an entire son and Rusty who thought he knew her. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean she has a son? A whole teenage son.
My thing about that too is once he finds out, why is there not more explanation and backstory as to why she would have a child that she did not want to have in her life?
My question. I was like, did I miss something?
It was very unexplained.
Unexplained. And it seemed like she did not want anything to do with that past relationship with her ex-husband or her son, which to me seems like a negative character trait.
Absolutely. If I were him, I'd be like, did I really love this woman? Because who does not want to have a relationship with their own child and not even just not have a relationship with them? You don't explain to said child to help them better understand. Like if both of his parents, in my opinion, failed him and set him up for a lifetime of issues because he was rejected by his own mother with no guidance or understanding. You know, like that would mess anybody up. Like I think the most that the ex-husband said was she was very good at compartmentalizing. And I only
Right.
ever knew about her what she wanted me to know.
Which was weird. And that maybe she, they were trying to say her ambition or something was
But
number
ambitious
one in her
women don't
life.
women don't have to be cold and don't
True.
have to not have relationships with their children. Carolyn was just a different type of person. And speaking of, Carolyn's son actually sends Rusty a text. Basically, I know what you did last summer style, saying you were there that night. I saw you. So he goes and meets up with him, only for him to tell him he has photos and video of Rusty being there and has turned them in to the police. And so Barbara, in her sainthood, is flirting with an affair with a little local bartender. Now, I tell you what, I would have rooted this on if they had cast any other actor.
Ashley, when I saw it was Dro, I was like, no, thank you. I don't need it. No.
Turned off immediately. Barbara, go home.
I
Barbara,
know
go
he's
home.
young and tall, but no, thank you.
Yeah, it took the excitement out of her potential get back for me with who they cast, unfortunately. So Barbara and Rusty's son has some doubt cast on him as well, because in one of those photos, basically he's seen riding past Carolyn's house on his bike that night that she was killed. And
Yep.
Rusty had some nerve yelling at Kyle when he finds this out. Who, what? I'm your father, sir. You yelling at me because I found out you were having an affair and I wanted to know more about your mistress? I think this was the first time in the series that I said or thought that adults don't think enough about the repercussions of their actions on children. You
Mm.
think if I have an affair, I'm cheating on my spouse. No, you're not. You're also cheating on your children.
The entire family, because it influenced how they manage their relationships and trust levels. And, you know, it cuts deep.
It definitely cuts deep. And Barbara makes a great point because she goes and washes down that bike just in case. And Rusty's like, Kyle's not going to be a suspect. And Barbara says, sometimes I think you forget our son is black. Okay. Like he does not have your white male privilege. Because one thing about Rusty as well that I noted in this series is he had the privilege of posting that bail and living his best life while he's on going through this trial. He has the support of his wife and children in the car, holding hands
Yep.
on the way
Yep.
home. He gets to sleep in his own bed.
I noticed that too. I was like, he's doing all of this on trial, still going home, wreaking havoc, trying to solve this
Wreaking
case.
wreaking havoc. And I hated seeing Rusty and Barbara like in intimate moments together because there was so much of him and Carolyn. I just kept thinking like, you don't even deserve Barbara.
Well, that's what I was trying to allude to is like their chemistry just wasn't palpable for me. It seemed like if anything, they were trying to show that Barbara was very safe. So a lot of those flashbacks was him doing a slow dance with Barbara, right? Like it wasn't very heated, right?
Yeah. It was a
Versus him
definite
like
distinction.
shaking with freaking Carol. I was like, okay,
I
this is
mean, we saw them so much in literally the throes of passion. It's almost like if I
yes.
was his girl, I would have been very uncomfortable watching this series.
Listen.
I'm like, did you enjoy yourself? Because
Oh my goodness. I didn't enjoy the flashes in his mind whenever her dead body showed up though. I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't want it.
yeah. Tommy Molto was so focused on Rusty as the number one suspect that he really did not consider anybody else. Did you think that was wise of him?
Nope. I think it made sense that Rusty was suspect number one, but I think he didn't have a solid case, not having found blood anywhere in Rusty's cars or clothes. And you know, besides him getting her pregnant and having quote unquote his skin under her nails, there wasn't much he could really pin on Rusty. And I think because of that, he should have looked for other suspects.
Yeah, it was a pretty weak case. Like even let's just go ahead and move into the trial. I kept thinking like this is a very uphill battle for y'all on the prosecution side because if I'm a juror, where's the evidence?
Yeah.
Besides the fact that I don't like this man because he was, not necessarily doing the right thing with his own family, that ain't got nothing to do with me. And I can't, like, throughout this trial, never felt like you gave me anything that even remotely resembled an explanation or understanding to point to Rusty for real.
Yeah.
Like, it never felt like y'all had a strong case. But they seem to think they had a strong case. They seem to think we gonna get this to stick for murder.
Had video of him going there the night of her murder, right? So
sure, but his phone puts him back at his house at a time where supposedly based on the food in her digestive system, the time of death was later than he would have been there.
But they were trying to discredit that particular autopsy. He was like, you're only for the defense when the defense like your case or like your findings. I was like, ooh.
It didn't stick for me.
It's all about reasonable doubt, huh?
It is. And poor Raymond has a medical emergency during the trial. You didn't know whether he had a massive heart attack and died or not.
Girl, I was like, no, not now. I was like, no. Can I say Raymond and Lorraine were my favorite people out of this entire series. Like,
that's funny because Raymond was disgusting to me.
You thought so?
When especially my second watch. Okay, because I was especially my second watch, he was farting and ugh.
Oh, not in that, but I'm talking about in terms of like it seemed like he had a legit head on his shoulder.
Oh well, yeah.
And I like the dynamic of his relationship with his wife.
Yeah. Especially in contrast to Rusty.
Girl, they actually seem like they love each other and grew old with each other. Like the fact that they were doing their garden together was so endearing to me. That's what I mean. But no, I understand. He was gross. He was a stereotypical, lawyer, government lawyer that is probably really good at their job, but the mouths are long, like in terms of the toll on their health.
Absolutely. Thankfully, he did survive. But instead of declaring a mistrial, Rusty decides he wants to represent himself. Justice for the Black female lawyer that was on his case, by the way.
I felt phenomenal.
She was quite disrespected.
Ooh, who is she though? Like I was like, yes, sis. She was very clear on who she was, what she brought to the table.
Yes, she was. She was good at her job. She just really didn't get a chance to show it. And that justice for my good sis. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you already said that you felt like, Rusty was your number one suspect, but was there any testimony during the trial that you felt was more compelling? Like our witnesses were the chief medical examiner. We had Carolyn's son, Michael. We had a couple coworkers. We had a Rusty, obviously. Did anybody's testimony like make you feel like, that was something that shifted the narrative in terms of the case?
Her son, Michael, honestly, based off of his testimony, his text messages to his mother, and the fact that he would just hop by every once in a while, I felt like he hated this woman and he is capable of killing and duplicating some of her previous cases, especially if he were to have found out that she was pregnant again and wondering whether or not she was going to keep that baby. Like to me, he was a blaring suspect for me, right behind Rusty.
Part of me wondered why she would even have decided to have Rusty's baby given her relationship with her son. Exactly. Like what was going on with her mentally? because it seemed like there was a little chip missing there in the parenting category. I agree though. His testimony was definitely compelling, given the, again, just very unexplained relationship that he had with his mother. And so one could have foreseen him being, angry. He seemed angry even in court. He seemed angry when he originally confronted Rusty.
Yep.
And so he may have just had some rage. But I did, for the first time during Rusty's testimony, give a little kudos to Tommy with the whole snap thing. Because I was like, that's something that's going to stick in the jury's mind for sure.
Yep.
That was very strategic and pretty well done.
Raymond knew that too.
Yes, he did.
It was like, man.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Well, I guess Rusty and Co. were as good as people said, because that man was found not guilty. And before we get to the big whodunit reveal, let's talk about, again, our prime list of suspects. So you said yours were Rusty and Michael. Anybody else on your suspect list that you just thought was the one who killed Carolyn?
I also felt like Tommy, I'm like, it'd be really interesting if he was the one who did it and he was building and prosecuting the case against Rusty. Yeah. That would have been an interesting twist for sure, especially when, again, his relationship with her just seemed really off. And yeah, those are the three.
I'm going to tell y'all my hunch that y'all could not tell me.
Oh, one more thing. David really felt like it was Barbara too. And I was like, I can see that a little bit.
Me and David were on the exact same page. My hunch, and you could not tell me it was not Barbara, because to go back to her temperament and the way she kind of was able to hold herself and steel herself against everything, even the testimony, the fact that he had told Carolyn he wanted to spend his life with her and all these things. I was like, it's only because she had the satisfaction of knowing she killed her. Like, that was my only explanation for how she could behave like this. So when we get to the scene
funny
where Rusty confronts her, also thinking that he helped to cover it up, because guys, inevitably what happened was Rusty went back to Carolyn's house on the night she was murdered, finds her dead, and immediately assumes only one person could do it, Barbara. And he tied her ass up to help try to cover her tracks. Turns out it was the daughter. It was Jaden. Surprise, surprise. I had never suspected the daughter.
You know, I feel like there was a bit of a red herring, I think that's what it's called, with the son and the bike. If anything, I'm like, oh man, maybe his son, he found out about the affair. He wanted to fight, maybe confront the lady or something like that.
The fact that Rusty was that sloppy that both his kids knew?
Yes, because that's the point where they were acting all shocked when he told her, when he told them about her. And so, yeah, I didn't see that coming at all. And even when I tried to look at some of the episodes again after watching it the first, all the way through, I would not have gotten that. We went all around the world and back, going to jail, talking to past, criminals and the one guy who showed up at his house, just all pointless at the end of the damn day.
Absolutely. After I watched it the second time, what it helped better explain was his behavior towards Barbara at times, where he was like lashing out at her. And it's because he thought he had helped cover up her crime. Like the time where they're in the bedroom and she tells him about her sleeping or almost sleeping with and kissing the bartender. And she ends up saying, fuck you. He's like, fuck me. And like grabs on her and stuff. It's because he wanted to say, you killed Carolyn and I covered it up for you.
And see, this is where I thought he was a narcissist, because I'm like, the audacity. You got this chick fucking pregnant and you're upset at me because of my
Exactly.
kids. But
Exactly.
it's so funny because, knowing the who done it and just knowing his thought process, I'm like, so was his manic behavior endearing, that he wanted to protect his wife by any
No.
means necessary? Because the whole obstruction was a thing. He was absolutely holding all the keys to prevent anyone from knowing anything significant going into the trial, or going into that particular case. So I don't know, man. But Barbara was looking at him like, you think I did this?
And Barbara was so heartbroken that it
She
was her
was.
daughter, because she's like, no, not my baby, not my child. Part of me felt like if she didn't hate you before, Rusty, she definitely hates you a little bit right now, because now her daughter has this thing that she has to live with, this weight she has to live with for the rest of
Because of
her
your
life.
mistakes.
And I know Jaden had to be thinking after all was said and done, like, how she get tied up like that? Like, I know Jaden had to ask some questions, because Jaden hit her with that fire poker and took
Yeah.
her ass home. So she like, what happened? And I remember watching this with my mom, and she said during the big reveal scene, like, Carolyn, this not my mom didn't say this is my thought, but this how you know Carolyn wasn't good with kids, because she was way too matter of fact in her delivery to Jaden about the situation. But also, I think my mom's point was like, why did she tell her that? Because sometimes I think people like Carolyn are so trying to be so like just truthful and matter of fact with you. They don't think about the way that their message is going to be received. And you told this to this girl at a point in time where she was very, very upset, and she snapped. She snapped. She told you, stay away from my family. You need to quit your job, stay away from my daddy. And your response is, it's your daddy, it's not me. But guess what? We don't have to be intertwined because I'm pregnant with his baby. You should, no.
Crazy.
No,
I don't
Carolyn.
know. I am of the opinion of being upfront, but I do understand what you're saying is like, read the room.
I think you have to be
Um,
careful. I'm a
yeah.
very typically honest person too, but there's a finesse that you need to have in life when you find yourself in certain situations, because this is my whole point before about Kyle. Now you really see the repercussions of a parent's actions on the lives of their children, right? Because Jaden was just this distraught and this wanting to keep her family together. She committed murder. Like, that's wild. And so you just have to be careful in matters of the heart as to how you handle them. Like, Carolyn put herself in a very dangerous situation in the first place, fucking with a married man. And let's be clear, Carolyn put the moves on him.
She
Okay.
did.
Carolyn
Why
wanted
can't we
him.
be in a society where we just touch someone that we want to touch? I'm
Yeah.
like,
She
if
was
that ain't a
selfish.
line,
She was selfish, and
oh,
she wanted some sex with him, but she didn't even want love, because she tells Rusty in one scene, like, you're messing this up because you're falling in love. And he's like, some things just can't be controlled. She was like, yes, they can, and I'm going to have to be the one to control them.
yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because she was absolutely looking for an affair. If anything, I think she might have been attracted to his power and his intelligence, like the fact that he was great at his job. Because I mean, I'm guilty of being like, oh, you're really good at what you do. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because he's confident and
Yeah,
smart and
yeah.
attractive and all these things.
And it
Absolutely.
also made sense that she was like, oh, I want to work with Rusty over Tommy, outside of the ick thing, of course, because it's like, well, who do I want to hitch my wagon to? The star, the one that everyone already knows, or somebody who's still trying to prove themselves. And so, yeah, I think she knew exactly what she was doing. I think she was using her womanly wiles to get what she wanted out of her career.
Mm-hmm.
She's giving women a bad name.
She's a messy human, that's for damn sure. And this is a family secret that they plan to bury, because Rusty essentially says at the end, we will never speak of this. Will they really be able to live happily ever after, you think?
Disassociation.
That look
Listen,
between Rusty and Barbara at the end though was like,
this is us.
this what we about to do for the rest of our lives.
I didn't think that look was that bad. The look was kind of like, all right, this is it.
Part of me still thinks they're gonna break up once the kids are gone off and
Because
grown.
that's the only reason why they're still together is their family. But I feel like I don't like that answer for families because kids know, like they may not be able to articulate it, but they can feel it. Energy is a real thing, you know, and
Absolutely.
they definitely know when things are off. And so people who claim that they want to wait till the kids are moved out, I feel like in some ways it's just comfortable to stay where you are out of convenience, not necessarily out of what they're claiming they're doing for their children.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts as we close out our recap of Presumed Innocent?
As I mentioned before, Rusty was unhinged. He was manic. He was suspect number one for me, so I was giving him the side eye the entire time. I thought one of my favorite conversations was between him and Raymond, and they were talking about the difference between shame versus guilt. And I was like, whoo. He was like, you might feel shame, but you aren't guilty because you would have to actually like do some internal work for that, you know? And it was an interesting world. The dynamics between, like I said, clashing factions within the actual law department and how everything was political was a fascinating structure for this particular world. And I want Barbara to be happy. I don't. I feel like at the end of the day, Rusty kind of made her second fiddle, like in terms of like you're my consolation prize.
I also hated the whole thing of Carolyn woke something up in me. She just wasn't your wife.
Right.
Once she became your wife and you had some years in history on your belt, you would cheat again.
Easy.
Even Barbara's therapist was rooting for Barbara. That's why she said, I ain't seeing nobody else but you. Okay. Everybody else got to go.
Well, I almost wonder if uh, Barbara's therapist was a safe space for Rusty at one point, though, because I'm like, you know, is she giving him the side eye? Like,
Yes, she was.
um,
Especially after he lied to her. She was like,
yeah, yep.
I don't like you no more. Get on out of my office. Like I said, this series was so well done to me. Kept you guessing till literally that final big reveal, and that was really like satisfying in terms of watching the whodunit of it all. I enjoyed that there was really no hero of the story. Like I said, like for me, Rusty was so unlikable that I never even had a strong buy-in to whether or not he was found innocent or guilty. I didn't think they had a good case, but if he had been sent to prison, I would not have cared. And so that was just an interesting part of it too, because I just didn't have a strong emotional investment. I more so just was, really looking at it from the perspective of like, who are all these people? Why do they behave in the ways that they do? And at the end of the day, what happened the night that Carolyn was murdered? So sometimes I think when I care too much, that's when I'm like, was ripping at my heartstrings, ripping at my heartstrings. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think J.J. Abrams and David and the cast and everybody did a phenomenal job. Ruth Negga was so measured in this performance. I thought she did a beautiful job as well. And shout out to the kids. I think the daughter starred in something with Leonardo DiCaprio, so she's definitely doing her thing in this acting world. So
Hmm.
good for you, sis. All right, let's move on to Hidden Gems. What you got for the week, Delora?
I have a new album. It is the new one from Chloe. It's called Trouble in Paradise. Ashley, I have to tell you, she and I are in different places of our lives because the stuff she's talking about on this album, I'm like, huh, I don't know if this is for me. But some of the songs are bangers. So the songs that I enjoy, Temporarily Single. So Messy AF, great song. Favorite, that's featuring Anderson .Paak, Never Let You Go. And then my absolute favorite of the album is called Want Me. And this is featuring her sister, Haley. So I need for them to make another album together because like this is ridiculous. and they need to make an album together. But yeah, it's the whole album is 49 minutes, so it is a quick listen, but those are some of my favorites, and I'm still rooting for her. I think she's still trying to find herself musically because actually on this album she has a song called Rose, which is named after the popular personal massager. And I was like, did they pay her to make this song?
Right.
Like, the lyrics literally say, like, I'm tired of trying to find these Negroes. Let me just get my rose. And I was like, excuse me? Clutching my pearls. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for that. While I was in Apple TV Plus land, I've been watching The Lady in the Lake, starring Natalie Portman. And our girl from The Queen's Gambit is in this one as well. I can't speak. Is in this one as well, Moses Ingram. And it's kind of an interwoven story between these two women's lives. It's a thriller. It's based off of a novel. I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot to it that I feel like adds to kind of the excitement once you actually kind of hear what is going on. But they come from two different worlds essentially, and their worlds collide, and it is not necessarily a good thing. So check that out. The Lady in the Lake is still going on, so it's not done yet. So if you're someone who likes to wait until all is said and done, then don't start just yet, but it should be wrapping up soon. And I think it's going to be one worth a watch. Another one that feels like it's a long form film and beautifully shot and very compelling. So that is my hidden gem for the week, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with us for this recap of Presumed Innocent. Delora, as usual, it's been a pleasure chatting.
Oh, always.
Please be sure to share this episode with everybody you know. We so appreciate it. We will be off for a week because we got some things to do, but we will be back. And in the meantime, as always, be blessed.
Bye.